Hello everyone, welcome to the channel Learn and Heal. Today we are going to discuss about formative and summative assessment. This is the lecture number 4 of the chapter Basics of Assessment. When it comes to assessment, if the assessment is related with the education, we can do that assessment in two ways. If it is the business assessment, maybe the way of assessment will differ. For education purpose, we are having two ways of assessment, that is formative assessment and summative assessment. So let's begin with formative assessment. With respect to a student, knowledge is nothing but the growth. So, formative assessment is the assessment made at different stages of its growth. So, how this student is performing in each stage of his academics. We can see some of the examples of this formative assessment. Let us say the questions asked during the classroom instructions. That is one of the type of formative assessment, or we can say the assignments or homework you are giving to the student at the end of the session, at the end of the day. So that is also a type of this formative assessment. Of course, the unit test conducted after the examination, or the weekly or the monthly test conducted by the teachers, everything comes under this formative assessment. These are the example. You can give a test to know that whether the student studied properly, whether they can able to reproduce everything on a paper. So these all things can be analyzed. So this is the example of the assessment that we are calling as formative assessment. Let us take a look at the nature of formative assessment. Formative assessment tries to find whether the student learning is as per that defined instructional objective or not. So this is what the process of assessment in the formative test. If you are getting an answer no, student is not performing, then what you have to do? You have to do a diagnostic test. What is that? You have to understand what is the barrier in students learning. Maybe student will say, I can't understand the language you are speaking, I can't understand because you are teaching very fastly, and the math numerical, it is very difficult for me to solve. So this kind of answers maybe the student will tell. So after understanding students problem, you have to modify your teaching methods, and you have to teach once again these students who are having the difficulty in learning. So that is what we are calling it as remedial teaching. So you have to modify the teaching methods of yours in order to make the student understand the content. So once again you can teach the same topic. This is remedial teaching. Then after this remedial teaching, obviously you have to conduct the test. Conducting the remedial test, whether this time the student is achieving a good mark or whether the student is progressing, that should be analyzed. If yes is the answer, that is, if the teacher found that the student learning is as per the defined instructional objective, what should do? Yes, teacher should provide a good feedback to the student. Motivational feedback you can able to give. So after all of this over, then what do you have to do? You have to continue the teaching as planned for both. So this is for the formative test program, how we are assessing. Let us take a look at the uses of this formative analysis or formative assessment. Just imagine if the test is conducted at the end of the academics, we will not be getting enough time for remedial teaching, right? But that can be done if we go with this formative assessment. So the first point is to find how far the instructional objective are achieved. If not achieved, help to conduct the diagnostic test and undertake remedial teaching for those who lag behind. Then the second one, it helps the teacher to change the method and techniques of teaching based on students' responses during the instruction. Say if all the students are performing very weak, then it must be the problem of the teacher. So teacher can understand that the method followed to teach has to be changed. So teacher can follow or modify the teaching method. Then third point is it help in sustaining students' motivation in learning and reduce students' anxiety. If only one test is conducted after the end of the semester, after the end of an year, student will be very much worried about the test. They will be studying only at the end of the instructional period. Before the examination only they will be taking their book, and then will be starting to worry about how much I have to study, how will I finish this, everything student will be worrying. But if there is a continuous test and evaluation, student will be always in touch with the syllabus all the time. So student won't be having that much worry about the semester or the big exam coming, because already he is studying continuously, he is writing the examination continuously, so he don't have to bother about that anymore. So it will reduce the anxiety. Formative assessment also helps to inform the parents about now and then of the learning progress and enable them to take necessary steps to improve their learning. From this formative assessment, continuously parents will be getting to know whether their child is performing good, whether he is lagging somewhere, whether he need additional tuition or something. If the examination is conducting only after the end of an academic year, just imagine the parents will not be having any idea throughout the year whether their child is performing or not. They are just believing my son or my daughter is good, they are going to perform well. But if he fails in that academic year, what the parents will think about that? Why he is failing? He is such a good student. How is this possible? Right. In the formative assessment, we are conducting regular tests, regular assessment programs, so that the parents will be able to know, okay, my child is studying, okay, my child is progressing, he is weak in this part, okay, I can arrange for some other special class for him. So all this parent involvement will be more in this formative assessment. Now we'll be looking at the summative assessment. Summative assessment is the assessment carried out at the end of any event or activity or process. As I said you, at the end of the academic year, if a test is conducting, we can say that it is a summative assessment. In education, assessment of the output at the end of any educational or training program is summative assessment. Yes, the semester examination, the quarterly examination, the yearly examination, we can say all these examinations are the assessment. Important features. It is generally carried out at the end of a particular instructional period, which may vary from semester to academic year. We said that. Tests used to assess the proficiency achieved by the student at the end of the instructional period is known as examination. Learning proficiency achieved by students in different parts and aspects of the syllabus for the courses evaluated and represented by marks or grades. So they will be analyzing what all the things he learned so far in this instructional period, and they will be evaluating that and represent it by marks or grades. Summative assessment could be used to grade students on the basis of their level of learning achievement. It also helps to find out eligible students for promotion to next higher class or allowed to go to next unit of the subject content. After the summative assessment done, if the student got less mark, student is not up to the mark, then he will be detained in his own class. If the student is performing good, then he will be promoted to the next higher class. Let us see the process of summative examination. Summative assessment is an assessment. It is held at the conclusion of an instructional period. Here, students' learning achievement throughout this instructional period is evaluated. As a result of the instruction, whether a particular level of learning proficiency achieved or not, this is what we are checking in the summative assessment. If the student is achieved this particular level of learning proficiency, okay, then it's very good. he can be promoted to the next class. If the proficiency is not achieved, what to do? Arranging for further learning of the same course by detaining in the same class. Yes, if yes, he attained that particular level of learning proficiency, he achieved that, then representing the level of learning achievements by marks or grade, promoting students to the next higher level. They'll be giving them grades A plus, B plus, like that grades will be given, then promoted into the next higher class. Then what are the uses of the summative assessment? To identify the present level of educational proficiency of the student, to classify the student on the basis of their learning achievements, to take the decision whether or not to promote the student to the next higher class, to decide the further course on the educational journey of the student based on the mark obtained, to find the overall performance of the teaching learning process throughout the academic year. How was this learning process or teaching process, that can be understand. The assessment expert Paul Blug put it like this: when the cook tastes the soup, that's formative assessment. When the customer tastes the soup, that's summative assessment. If you are a cook, you will be tasting the soup throughout the process of making the soup, not only after finishing. Because if he wanted to touch up something, he wanted to do that early. So throughout the process of soup making, cook will be tasting this one. After serving on the table, there cannot be any possibility for changing the taste of the soup, right? So now the customer will decide whether the soup is good or bad. So the same situation is there in the formative assessment and summative assessment. Teacher can regularly check the progress of the student in formative assessment, but when it comes to the summative assessment, teacher is not checking, concerned educational authority is assessing that through examination. So this is a beautiful statement that can relate to the formative and summative assessment. Now just we'll be comparing just these two kinds of assessment. So have a look at this: formative assessment and summative assessment. Formative assessment is done using test and summative assessment is carried out with examinations. Formative is carried out during the period of instruction at each stage, but summative is done at the conclusion of the instructional period, evaluating the overall achievement of the student. And in the formative, content area being tested is very small, but in-depth evaluation can be done because the evaluation is happening at each stage. So in-depth evaluation can be done. But here in the summative assessment, the testing of the large portion taught is what is happening here. So evaluating the different aspects of learning. So however, evaluation lacks the depth because you are evaluating all the big contents together. So definitely the evaluation will be lacking depth. So we'll be moving with onto the some other points also. We'll see formative assessment led to diagnostic test and remedial teaching for those who are found to lag behind the learning. There is a chance for the students who are lagging behind the learning to come forward and to perform better in the next examination. But in the summative assessment, there's not that kind of chance. Students have to be detained in that class for another academic year. It helps to grade students based upon the achievement level and decide who are all promoted to the next higher class. Formative assessment reveals how well students have learned the portions taught, and summative assesses the overall achievement of the student in each subject of the course of study. Formative is an integral part of teaching learning process, and summative is carried out at the terminal stage of the teaching learning process. So formative assessment is happening throughout the instructional period, and the summative assessment is happening at the end of the instructional period. So this is all about the difference between formative and summative assessment. We'll be coming with another lecture soon. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.